I have two different subjects I wanted to cover, neither of which really feel comfortable as a single podcast episode. So I thought I would combine them into one. The two subjects are dealing with my own potential foreshortened life and PUBG strategies. This is Jason Scott Talks His Way Out of It, a podcast about technology, history, and getting myself out of debt. Thanks to Jeff Atwood, Daniel Boyd, William Hearn, and the hundreds of other supporters on Patreon and elsewhere who have been supporting me and helping me get out of debt. I started playing PUBG, PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds, as soon as it became available on the Xbox, and I kept with it on and off again for months. A lot of that because it was very unique and I hadn't played any kind of battle royale game. But also, it was so fascinatingly put together wrong. It lacks so much of the polish and the efforts made by game developers in the background to make it all just kind of work. I remember being actually horrified when I found out from my friend who worked at Midway Games that some of the racing games would make the lead car slower and the other cars faster, just so that everybody who had put a quarter in felt they were still in the race. That seemed incredibly cheating to me, but I couldn't really describe why. You didn't get more money or less money based on where you landed, and to be sure, the point of the game was to have fun, not to reflect some objective mark of quality that would be judged worldwide playing this game. It took me a while, but I got it. With PUBG, you don't have anything like that. It's a derivative of a derivative, and as a result, it implemented everything extremely roughly in a way that sort of felt like balance, but really wasn't. Dropping 100 people onto an incredibly large game map, a game map the engine could barely hold together, you would find yourself stuck into endless rooms that were on the inside and outside. The game would slow down, pop up, deal with all of the technical issues. But in that complete lack of control, that lack of rubber banding and making the best player a little worse and the worst players a little better, you had an enormous potential for an incredible amount of really strange and unique gameplay experience and gameplay drama. You had an experience that could change radically from game to game, and that has kept me interested in it since I started playing. I should have been more scared when I was told that I had another blockage in my heart. Something about having gone through it all, when I'd never done anything like it, and the newness and fear of all the possibilities and what people were trying to say to me, well, that was gone now. I'd been through this. I'd had a heart blockage. I knew what to expect. The same reason I noticed the symptoms when I walked around, that it was a sense of the circulatory system not quite working like it should, and parts of my body reacting with pain in ways that I normally wouldn't ever experience. Not terrible pain, but some sort of distant aching in a way that didn't correlate to any specific organ or muscle. I knew all of this. I'd seen it before. When the stress test said that I had what they called a severe blockage, I knew what I was in for. I knew where I'd be wheeled in. I knew what that experience would be like. It just became a matter of scheduling, of getting in the right place, and being told that everything was probably going to proceed according to plan. What did bother me was how soon after the previous heart attack I'd had this problem. I guess in my mind, I thought of it like getting a reset or having an oil change. Once they put in that stent and undid that 100% blockage, I was ready to go. It would take decades to get back to a problem. Just 2.5 years later, here I was facing down a damaged heart. The fact that I'd caught it when it was still just a partial blockage instead of a complete one wasn't exactly reassuring. It felt a little bit too much like luck. I just don't know how long I've got. Now, this is a normal symptom of having a heart attack. All of your premises get shaken, your foundations are gone, you don't quite know your body like you did, and you inevitably get morbid. Death has stared you in the face, and this time it smiled and disappeared. It becomes quite obvious that there's a bargain going here, and the house is going to win. Because in PUBG, you are going across an island in a plane, and you choose when to drop. There's a whole variation of how the game starts that's entirely up to you. Maybe you want to drop where everybody is going to drop, and each of the islands has a place that most people will drop at. One specific base, one specific area, and suddenly the place is teeming with dozens of players, and everybody is just grasping for guns and shooting at each other. But you could choose to go as far and as distant away from everyone else as you possibly can. Build up a massive arsenal of everything you are able to grab from multiple buildings, and then, as the game enters its final rounds, show up like a human tank, completely ready for everything, with more medical equipment than a CVS and more guns than an armory, and ready to take on the last straggling few standing between you and victory. Depending on the day, I have a bunch of different approaches. Sometimes I want to be in the thick of it, landing in, grabbing what I can, having somebody come at me, firing as fast as I can, and then stepping over his body to go after the next guy, or turning the corner and suddenly getting hit full in the face with a shotgun blast. Either way, I either start over again really quickly, all of the suspense gone as to where I'll be in the game, or I'll walk away from an area filled with a silence that I caused. You can actually play a whole variation of games from dropping in the plane alone. I have several that I've labeled over time. One of them, the one I just described, I call the soup, like getting into the soup. But other ones are a little weirder. There's one I call end of the line. Because PUBG isn't a well-designed game, many players disconnect, maybe 4 or 5 out of every 100. It's never a full game. When you get to the end of the line on the plane, before it just finishes crossing the island, it will eject every player that hasn't moved. This will include 4 or 5 players just dropping straight down without any turns or any action. If you fall along with them and land, you can punch them, kill the players, and get an immediate score of 4 or 5, far beyond what other players are ever going to see. Which is great, except other people have the same idea. The game, which is about shooting, suddenly turns into a fist fight over a bunch of mannequins and who's going to get a very arbitrary score. Another variation, depending on my mood about the drop, is called murder. In that one, I jump out of the plane not around the part of the soup, but when I see a few people going in an odd direction, and I choose one player, and I fall after them. So as they're doing their parachuting, I'm right behind them. If I'm lucky, they notice me. Suddenly the game takes on a whole different tenor for them and for me. Something's going to give. Something is going to happen. They're going to choose a relatively isolated area. That's probably what they were going for. And here I am. I'm part of the story. We don't know who's going to walk away from it, but it's going to be one of us. And I have no idea when I hit the ground how it's going to go. The result of the increased morbidity is that I focus on getting things done. I was always good at working on tasks and projects, but I've been pretty intensely focused on getting things off my table, finding boxes of to-dos and clearing them out, making sure that really old emails are getting answered, making sure that there's nothing that's waiting on me. Maybe I'm not able to hold a pile of things for somebody and I need to find a new home, or I'm going to go to what's remaining of my films and sell them off. Maybe I just want to focus on making sure that there's very little in my storage that's not labeled and clearly indicates what it is. The reason being is I don't want somebody sitting in there trying to find out if this piece of plastic is worthless, but this one is valuable and should be treated like a historical artifact. I'm trying to take that away from people who potentially will come after me. However things go, it's been a very, very interesting tool trying to prioritize projects. What things need me? What am I doing simply because I'm an active person who likes to get involved and do projects? And what is my sole responsibility, the thing that nobody else is going to step forward to do, and I really, really should do it because it needs to be done? Don't get me wrong. I love going through piles of vintage equipment and seeing where it came from and maybe some of the story attached to it with stickers and documentation, but that's not necessarily something that only I can do. Only I can look at a sheet of papers and know that those were given to me by a historical figure who is now gone, who wanted me to digitize it and make it available to folks, and then to donate it to the right institution. Only I can really look at a bunch of tapes and know that these were already digitized, and these should just be sent away for storage, like the completed project that they are. Piles of floppies, piles of books, and the endless collection of knickknacks that I got here and there. It's just a matter of indicating which ones are trash and which ones are treasure, which ones are things that were so jumbled up I never had a chance to sort them, and which of them are projects that I should contact a trusted friend or associate and say, I think you need to handle this one. Emergent gameplay is a theory that says that people can create games and create rules outside of whatever's built into the toy or the game itself. Just because you have a game of Monopoly doesn't mean you couldn't run side bets or change how the bank works or make it that while you're playing certain properties you get other things going on. There's nothing stopping you, per se. People who are really committed to the rules might argue with you, but it's possible, if everyone's cool with it, to take these items and change them around. This is especially the case with things like Lego and Jenga and building blocks of any sort where somebody decides they're going to come up with their own rules and work with them. Kids do this all the time. A stick, a ball, a hula hoop, a rock. These become completely different things from their inherent natures, all according to what the kid wants to do. Unintentionally, PUBG became that. There's nothing stopping you, really, from grabbing one of the vehicles that's scattered around the island and just going for a drive. You don't have to kill anybody. You don't have to get involved with anyone until maybe the last few seconds of the game. It's possible, entirely possible, to turn it into a safari that eventually ends in murder. It could also be a boat ride up the river. It could be hiding inside of a bathroom for 20 minutes. You could be lying down in the trees and listening to shooting echoing throughout the valley. You can make it whatever you want to. The game doesn't give you as many quote-unquote points for being able to shoot or not shoot at people. If that's not important to you, you've made a game of your own. You just don't see that much, especially in a game this popular. Being able to get 100 people together for a battle royale game is a huge hurdle. One of the problems that other battle royale games hit is that if their player base goes down quickly enough, you just can't get 100 people together in any dependable way. There's games coming forward that will be able to have hundreds or 1,000 players at once. And again, it's just going to be a problem getting all of those folks assembled, networked, and functioning, and have the game not fall over. Maybe there'll be a time when it's not a heady experience for me. I remember playing multiplayer games in the 90s like Doom and Quake, and death matches always had to happen where somebody was nearby. The networking came later where somebody might be on the internet, but for me, I knew somebody in that room was making my life hell. And Doom and Quake were games where any amount of screwing around was instant death. The fact that you can, if you choose to, roleplay a dreamer, a coward, a psychotic, a soldier, a mercenary, and have it all interlock is a miracle. When the door opens on the plane, I don't know which of those people I'm about to become. I've said it before, and I'm not kidding or putting on a brave face. I've said it before, and I mean it. I've had a really good life, and I don't regret the way it's gone. I've enjoyed the people I've met, the jobs I've been involved in, the discoveries, the highs, the lows. It's all been an incredible, fantastic ride. The only question is when it ends. Having this kind of a medical scare always brings into sharp focus that lives have a span, and mine will, and it's just up in the air when it's going to be. My Aunt Doris died in her late 40s from a heart problem. My father has had an arrhythmia. My aunt has had stents. There's stuff going on in there. But if I look at my grandparents, the story goes in every direction. My grandmother lived to her 90s. My grandfather died of cancer. My paternal grandfather died in a car accident, and my paternal grandmother died of essentially a broken heart. I get a lot of time, or I don't make it home. I can take steps to make things safer, but I can't take every step. I guess that's one thing people sometimes do if they're starting to feel a little bit constrained by their health. They stop doing things. And my cardiologist really gave it to me a couple times when I said I was worried about my health, where he said, well, I don't need you turning 48 into 90. Please live a life. Please get out there. Please do things and get involved in stuff. Don't just sit around waiting for something terrible to happen, because that's much worse, and it will happen then. About 2 weeks ago, while recovering from the procedure, I started to feel a few of those symptoms coming back. I really did. It wasn't imagined. I would sit in place and I could feel the pains in familiar places coming after me. I could sense that I wasn't myself, that things hurt that shouldn't have. I had headaches I didn't expect and aches where they shouldn't have been. I got a little worried. It turned out that one of the medications that had been tweaked after my second procedure was causing these symptoms. I was being given 80 milligrams of atorvastatin, and it turns out I'm one of those people who gets side effects. So I'm down to 20, and maybe eventually I'll go back to 40. Apparently I have a limit there. The sense that I had, like the procedure hadn't taken, made me incredibly morbid. I was worried that this was it. It was going to be falling down and the end of me. At that point, you ask yourself all sorts of questions. Did I do enough? Does everybody I care about know how much I care about them? What will people do in my absence? What's going to happen to my stuff? And how much is this going to hurt? I don't feel particularly motivated to go into my own philosophical thoughts on the end of life, but I think we can all agree that one's ability to directly affect the physical world around you definitely ceases. And with that, the end of the story happens. Whatever you've done is what people will remember you for, and whatever effects you leave behind are there to stay. I've left a lot of people with some very strong feelings, positive and negative, about the things I've been involved in. I'm fine with that. I couldn't begin to work out the numbers of people I've communicated with, interacted with, spoke to, visited, been a part of the story of their lives. Now that I'm feeling much better, I don't have to fill every waking moment with thoughts like this. Doing that sort of audit, it's an exercise I'm glad I keep engaging in. It keeps me focused. It lets me know every morning, with my combination painful and excited feeling of waking up, that there's something to look forward to, that there's things to do, and that No matter what happens, I'm going to make a difference every single day. The plane is over the island. I'm going to drop, and I can't wait to see what I'm going to be. This is Jason Scott talks his way out of it, thanks to James Bequayanu, Forrest Fuqua, Mark Pilgrim, and the hundreds of other supporters on Patreon and elsewhere who have been supporting me and helping me get out of debt. Where are we dropping?